All right, Francis Collins, an Orthodox Christian, a sharp guy. Like all people, I presume that he wants to be understood correctly, not to be misrepresented. Uh, but yet, when people don't want to be misrepresented, they should accurately represent what other people say. And though I do respect him a great deal, I think he has unintentionally misrepresented the ID movement in his book, The Language of God. All right, so on page 191, he writes and following a particularly damaging crack in the foundation of intelligent design theory arises from recent revelations about the poster child of ID, the bacterial flagellum. The argument that it is irreducibly complex rests upon the presumption that the individual subunits of the flagellum could have had no prior useful function of some other sort, and therefore the motor could not have been assembled by recruiting such components in a stepwise fashion, driven by the forces of natural selection. Recent research has fundamentally undercut this position, and then he has another footnote quoting Miller, or another footnote from Kenneth Miller. Specifically, comparison of protein sequences from multiple bacteria has demonstrated that several components of the flagellum are related to an entirely different apparatus used by certain bacteria to inject toxins into other bacteria that they are attacking. This bacterial offensive weapon, referred to by biologists as the type 3 secretory apparatus, provides a clear survival of the fittest advantage to organisms that possess it. Presumably the elements of this structure were duplicated hundreds of millions of years ago, and then recruited for a new use by combining with other proteins that had previously been carrying out simpler functions. The entire motor was ultimately generated. Granted, the Type 3 secretory apparatus is just one piece of the flagellum's puzzle, and we are far from filling in the whole picture if we ever can. But each new puzzle piece provides a natural explanation for a step that ID had relegated to supernatural forces and leaves its proponents with smaller and smaller territory to stand upon. And you may have seen there's a clip on YouTube where Kenneth Miller is talking about the Type 3 secretory apparatus, and it was right after the famous trial where he testified against ID being taught in public schools. All right, Collins continues. Behe cites Darwin's famous sentence to support the arguments of irreducible complexity. Quote, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Unquote. In the instance of the flagellum, and in virtually all other instances proposed for irreducible complexity, Darwin's criteria have not been met, and an honest evaluation of current knowledge leads to the same conclusion that follows in Darwin's next sentence, quote, but I can find out no such case, unquote. All right, so here we see again a misunderstanding of intelligent design and irreducible complexity. As a matter of fact, I was just watching Michael Behe on the Colbert Report, and he's talking about how a mousetrap is irreducibly complex. And Colbert says, well, if we took away part of the mousetrap, it would have no use at all. It would have no function whatsoever. And Behe said, no, it would have a function, but not the function of catching mice. So I don't know how many times this has to be repeated. It's very frustrating when ID proponents will say over and over and over and over again, an irreducibly complex system can have a function when it has been reduced. It just can't have the same function that it does before it is reduced. Alright, so yes, apparently the bacterial flagellum was, or part of it was used by bacteria to inject, what is it now? Inject, to inject toxins into other bacteria. So it's poisoning these other bacteria like a syringe, like a doctor would use a syringe. And it does look like a syringe when you look at the drawing of the bacterial flagellum minus certain parts of it. But as I said, and as Behe has said over and over again, it's okay for these parts to have a different function. Okay, let's see here. And it's also okay, I would say, for there to be a natural process whereby the additional parts are added to make the bacterial syringe into a bacterial motor. The important thing is that the final product, the bacterial flagellum, has the specific parts in the specific relationship. That is something which smacks of intention, of a mind working to bring things together to the right place at the right time to do the desired goal, the end for which it was designed, to have this propeller, to have a motor to propel through whatever. Okay, so yeah, so I think that that is clear that Behe and other people who um, allow for irreducible complexity and intelligent design would agree with Collins that and Miller that you can have a syringe, then it becomes a motor, but it's still irreducibly complex, and it still points to an intelligent designer. Collins continues to, so scientifically ID fails to hold up, providing neither an opportunity for experimental validation nor a robust foundation for its primary claim of irreducible complexity. More than that, however, ID also fails in a way that should be more... Oh, yes. More than that, however, ID also fails in a way that should be more of a concern to the believer than to the hard-nosed scientist. ID is a God of the gaps theory inserting a supposition of the need for supernatural interventions in place that its proponents claim science cannot explain. Various cultures have traditionally tried to ascribe to God various natural phenomena that the science of the day had been unable to sort out, whether a solar eclipse or the beauty of a flower. But those theories have a dismal history. Advances in science ultimately fill those gaps, etc. Ultimately, a God of the gaps religion runs a huge risk of simply discrediting faith. Intelligent design fits into this discouraging tradition and faces the same ultimate demise. Okay, it's a little confusing to me why Collins would refer to ID as a God of the gaps, where in an earlier chapter he's giving the traditional cosmological and teleological arguments for the existence of God. The teleological argument being not ID, but the fine-tuning of the physical constants of nature. And he says that people will say that this is a God of the gaps argument. We don't know yet what caused the Big Bang, so we'll plug God in there. And then he says, well, no, this is a God-shaped hole that only God can fit into. Uh, so it's a little perplexing that he would turn around and mischaracterize the ID claims as God of the gaps. The idea of intelligent design is not that science has not found out how this happened. It's that science, if Behe is correct, cannot explain the bacterial flagellum, for example, in a Darwinian fashion. In other words, if a you can't have natural selection, Behe says, bringing about in a mindless chance kind of way an irreducibly complex system such as the bacterial flagellum. So it's not a matter of we don't know the science yet, it's that we do know the science. And we know that there has to be some other explanation than blind natural selection, alone, unguided. So, and also the claim on the part of Francis Collins that it doesn't make predictions that can be tested, that is contradicted by something else he says, where he says that the discoveries of Kenneth Miller about the type 3 secretory syringe falsifies it. So is it unfalsifiable and unscientific, or is it scientific but already falsified? Well, he's contradicting himself here. So I think it's probably safe to say that Collins has heard some propaganda that atheistic evolutionists have written against ID when they didn't really represent it correctly, and apparently he did not take the time to check it out for himself. But I think that if he did, he would see that whether he ends up accepting ID or not, he would at least see that what he's describing as ID is not ID. Okay, he does not talk about ID as ID really is. He talks about it as a straw man, which is easier to knock down. So that doesn't mean that he has to accept it, but he just should not misrepresent it. That's what I'm trying to say in these two videos. So thank you for watching. Let's hear your comments, and shalom out.